tying knots one of the best and easiest skills that you can learn them easily and use on your bushcraft and camping trips. I said easily because in this video I tried to choose the easiest and most useful knots related to packing, set up a tarp and hammock, also set up a natural shelter. You can see the list of knots that I'm gonna show you in this video. I believe everyone can be good at knots if they choose knots they are comfortable with. In some cases I tried to show two different knots for same purpose and situation, and you can use the one you are most comfortable with or even both of them. Also, you can tie and untie most of these knots with gloves on. I hope it be a useful video. Enjoy! First of all, I need to pack my stuff. I use a Woodland Zip knot for bending my tarp or bundle the pieces of my boxo. This knot will work with both thick and thin ropes. To tie this knot, double the rope. Then place your tarp in the middle. Now fold the rope back and make two little loops and place them next together like in the video. Pass the right tail end through both loops to opposite direction. Do the same with the other tail end, right to left, left to right. Now pull both tails to tighten the knot. This knot is very secure and doesn't get loose easily, but you can easily untie this knot in a second. Another knot for same purpose is a simple cinch knot. To tie this knot, take both ends and fold it in half. In other words, double the rope. Then place your tarp in the middle again. Make sure the cord is long enough. Then take both tail ends and go on the bottom side through the loop. Do it twice. And then just pull the tails and cinch that down. To untie the knot, pull the tails in opposite direction and release the tension. Next step is attach my axe to the backpack. But before that, sometimes I'd like to wrap some cords around my axe handle, which is good idea for emergency situations. Or as you see, I even use common whipping, also known as plain whipping, for my Kuksa handle. It's easy, quick, effective and reliable in most applications. To tie the common whipping, make a bite and lay the bite on the handle. Then take a round turn around the handle and the bite. Take a second round turn, laying it against the first. Always pull the cord really tight after each turn, working toward the end of the bite. Remember, at the beginning of the process, you should leave a few inches of working end of the bite beyond, enough to pull on later. Now pass the tail end all the way through the bite. Then pull the working end to bring the eye of the bite under the wraps. Stop pulling when the bite is well buried under the wraps. If you trim the ends, you cannot untie the cord later and it must be cut. Now attaching my axe to the backpack. I use the famous Canadian gem knot, also known as Arbor Knot. It's basically two overhand knot. Overhand knot is the simplest of all knots and difficult to untie. With the second overhand knot, I make a loop. Then take the other end of the cord, pass it here on your backpack. Place the handle there and pass end of the cord through the overhand loop that we have made and now just cinch it down. I like this knot because I don't need to tie and untie it each time I want to attach my axe to the backpack. Simply pull and play with the working end to lose the knot and again tighten it. Tie the knot once and leave it there always. Now everything is packed and I'm done with packing my stuff, ready to go camp. Sometimes the ground is wet because of rain or snow, and you don't want to put your backpack on the ground. This is how you can hang your backpack on a tree. Use an enough length of cord. Tie the ends together with an overhand knot, or you can also use a figure eight. Then wrap the cord around the tree and pass one end through the other. Test the cord stay in place. Then pass the cord through backpack handle. Make sure the handle is strong enough. Fold the rope back and put a toggle between both loops. The toggle will lock everything in place. I mostly use my tarp to set up a shelter. Most of the setups need ridgeline, and we need to know how to tie a ridgeline. There is 4 knots that I mostly use them to tie a ridgeline. First, I tie a bowline loop at the end of the cordage. The bowline has been called the king of knots. Here is the basic way to tie a bowline. First, make a 6 so that the rope crosses over on top of itself. Then bring the end of the rope up through that small loop. Bring the end of the rope around behind the main part of the rope and insert it into the small loop. Dress and set the knot. Then wrap the cord around the tree and then push the main ridgeline through the loop and insert a small stick, and then pull down tight and the stick stops the loop from slipping. Of course, you can lose the toggle and untie the bowline loop easily, because the sum rule of this video is to choose knots that can be untied easily. Another reliable and very fast knot to tie for the same purpose is Vage. I love this knot. Wrap the cord around the tree. Then I take both strings with my hand. Make a gun. Then wrap the short end one time around my fingers. Then wrap those 2 fingers underneath the strings and pinch the short end. Watch again at a different angle. After pinching the short end a few inches up the end, then pull that through the bite and pull it tight. It may look a little tricky, but it is much simpler than it seems, and you will never forget it after learn. Pull the short end to untie the knot. I also use Vage to set up my hammock to get some relax. I forgot to say, use the right kind of ropes. It's beautiful, but it's not time to relax. Let's go back to finish the ridgeline. After tying the rope to the first tree, I take the ridgeline to the other tree. For second tree, I prefer to tie an adjustable hitch. I'm gonna show you 2 options. First, trucker's hitch knot. To tie this knot, wrap the ridgeline around the tree. Then hold the ridgeline like this. Rotate your wrist and twist the ridgeline. Then grab the ridgeline and pull it through the loop to lock it. Now pass the line through the slip knot and pull it back to tension the ridgeline. To secure the knot, I make a quick release loop and lock everything. Also, you can use auto-locking trucker's hitch version. Make the slip knot and pass the loosened off cord through the slip knot twice. Then let the friction hold everything in place. Another adjustable knot that I use a lot in different situations is Toline hitch, so simple and effective to tension the lines. Wrap your line around the tree. Then wrap the remaining working end over and through the ridgeline 2 times. Toline is also known as midshipman's hitch. After you done this stage, make one more wrap outside the ridgeline in the same direction as the first 2 wraps, then tie it. Of course, I prefer trucker's hitch knot for ridgeline because Toline can be more difficult to adjust after being heavily loaded. This knot can now slide up and down and adjust the tension of your ridgeline. I also use Toline when set up my tarp to adjust the tension of guy lines. When I've done with the first tree, suddenly I noticed that my rope is damaged and I decided to use Alpine Butterfly Loop, also known as Lineman's Loop. It provides a secure loop in the middle of a rope and it's capable of withstanding heavy loads. In this case, my rope is damaged and I wanted to isolate the damaged section. To tie the Alpine Butterfly Loop, with one end of the rope toward you and the other going away, wrap the rope around your hand 3 times. This is loop number 1, 2, and 3. Your active loop is number 2. It goes under loop 3, then over loop number 1 and 3, and finally underneath 1 and 3. Under, over, under. Then grasp the end of the second loop. Then tug the ends and dress the knot. While this knot is incredibly strong and secure, it can be untied easily, even after being subjected to heavy loads. And at the final, you can clip gears to Alpine Loop while camping to keep your stuff off the ground. After dealing with the damaged section, as you can see, the rope doesn't have enough length. It always happens. There is a lot of knots to attach two ropes to make it longer. I chose to use double sheet bend. You can use it to join two ropes with equal and unequal thickness. Also, for tying a rope around a sheet, start by creating a bight in the thicker rope. Then pass the thinner rope up through the bight. Wrap the thinner rope around the bight 2 times. And at the end, tighten the knot by pulling on both ends of the ropes. Ensure that the knot is secure and hold both ropes in place to prevent it from coming undone. I believe double sheet bend is totally enough for most of bushcraft and camping activities, but if I want to use another bending knot, no doubt it's Zeppelin bend, because it's a lot of fun to tie the Zeppelin and it has a beautiful name, Zeppelin. First make a 6, the tail goes over the main rope. Then make a 9, the tail goes under the main rope. Then place the 6 over the 9. Pass each working end through the central overlap of the 2 loops. Ensure that each working end goes in opposite direction. At the end, dress and set the knot by pulling on all 4 rope segments. Now let's set up a lean-to shelter with a roof, because I can cover more knots with this setup. Also, it's a good setup, at least for tree season. First, how to attach your tarp to the ridgeline? The answer is Prosec loop. For that, we need to tie a small loop. Simply use an overhand knot. For setup lean-to shelter, we need 2 loops. Now attach the loop to the ridgeline by Prosec knot. Wrap the loop through itself and over the ridgeline. 2 wraps can be enough, but for more friction, I wrap it 3 times because my tarp is heavyweight. At the end, pull it down to cinch the knot and dress the knots. The wraps cannot cross over each other. Prosec loop is a friction hedge. When there is no downward pressure in the knot, it can move freely, but when you apply pressure, it grips the ridgeline and won't slide. Now take your tarp, pass the Prosec loop through the tie-out point, and use a toggle to keep it in place. Now for making the roof, we need poles. As you see, I use even edge to tie the guy line to the tie-out point. Then I use Cloe hitch to attach the guy line to the pole. Cloe hitch is most effectively used to secure a middle section of rope to an object it crosses over. It is considered one of the most important knots alongside the bowline and the sheet bend. There is two methods to tie a Cloe hitch. One of them is suitable for the middle part of the rope. Method number 2. First, make 2 loops. Pay attention to the rotate direction. Your right hand rotates counterclockwise. Then place the second loop over first loop. Arrange to form the proper size hole in center. Then lower onto pole and pull both ends to tighten the knot. Now after attaching guy line to the pole, we need to peg it down. But how you attach the guy line to the peg? Sometimes I use Toline hedge as you see in the video. And most of the times I use a slip knot. It's so simple. Make a 6. Do another wrap to make a loop. Pass the working end through the loop. Set and dress the knot. By pulling the working end, you can loosen the knot. Tie it once and leave it there on your guy lines forever. After pegging down the guy lines, we are done with the tarp setup. No, we are not done yet. It seems that one of the poles is short, and as a result, the roof is not the same height on both sides. We need to find a longer pole, but sometimes, like here, there is not a long enough pole, or sometimes it's dark and it's not safe to search for a pole. The solution is round lashing. But for tying this knot, we should know how to tie end rope Cloe hitch. Method 1. For tying Cloe hitch, pass the end of the rope around the pole. Continue over the standing end and around the pole a second time. Thread the end under itself and pull tight to form the Cloe hitch. Now let's go back to round lashing. Round lashing is used to lash two parallel spars to make an extension. In this case, we use it to make a longer pole for our tarp setup. Let's begin. We need 2 round lashing, one at each end. The most common way to tie round lashing starts by a Cloe hitch around both poles. Then we wrap the rope around both poles. Round lashing followed by 6 to 10 tight wraps next to each other. Place your thumb on the last wrap to keep the tension, then wrap again. We don't need any frapping turns for round lashing. At the end, we finish the job by another Cloe hitch around both poles. Now we are truly done with the tarp setup. But what if you need to set up a natural shelter? To set up the majority of shelters, you only need 2 different kinds of lashing. For example, lean-to shelter. For this purpose, I recommend square lashing. It's very secure for bending poles at right angles. I start square lashing with a slip knot. You can also use Cloe hitch. Now go around the top, then bottom, top, bottom, top to top, bottom to bottom. Usually 2 wraps and 2 fraps is enough. Now for the fraps, you come around the inside. After each frap, pull it really tight. More tight, more secure. At the end, finish the square lashing with a claw edge. The other lashing that you may need to set up a tipi-style shelter or a pot hanger tripod is shear lash, also known as tripod lashing. Again, I start the shear lash with a slip knot around a pole about 10 inches from the top. You can use claw edge or whatever you want, there is no rule. Then start the wraps around all 3 poles. Again, there is no rule how many wraps you need, but 3 to 6 is enough. If you tie too many wraps, you won't be able to open up the poles. Remember to pull it tight after each wraps. Now it's time to fraps. It's good to put sticks here. It makes the fraps much easier. Fraps are important to make pressure between poles. The key point is this: don't cross the lines. 2 fraps will be enough. Shear lash ends with a claw edge. It's important to end with a claw edge. Now, after making a tripod, it's time to hang your pot over the fire. There is numerous knot options like Toline, but I think this method that I'm gonna show you is the easiest one to have an adjustable pot hanger. Make an overhand loop at the end of the remaining lashing cord. Take your pot and pass the loop through the pot handle. Then pass the standing cord through the overhand loop to make a bite. Watch again. Put a stick in between to hold the pot. Push up on the taggin, raise the stick up, or keep the taggin and push the stick down to lower the height.